Well, good afternoon. Because of all the fires the last couple of weeks, I've gotten a lot of inquiries from people wanting to know what do I do? So even though we talked about it last week and we had a guest, I'm going to go back a little bit and tell you how it generally works because I specialized in property and casualty insurance litigation for at least 40 years. And so I've been through the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I got a pretty good idea of what you are facing. First thing you're facing is the emotional impact of the fact that you may be out of your home, or you may have suffered damages, smoke damages, soot damages. There may be a lot of issues that come up, and so I'm going to try to help you through the system in the earliest stages. As I mentioned last week, my strongest recommendation, and I'm not giving anybody any legal advice, is that you hire a good public insurance adjuster. They're licensed by the state. They will take a lot of the hassle off of your neck. They'll do your inventories. They'll communicate with the insurance company. They'll read your policy. They'll make it a lot easier for you. So I recommend that you do that. That's a first step. And I'm about to sneeze.
Bless you.
I did that because I wanted to make sure you were still here, Gary.
Oh, I'm always here.
Well, anyway, so I want to get back into the mechanics of it. And I mentioned, I think, last week that I once gave a speech to the State Bar Association called "The Only Float in Town Isn't at the Rose Parade." And that's basically the way the insurance industry operates. I'm not saying every insurance company is dishonest and they don't pay or anything like that, but there is a fair amount of that going on. Insurance companies take advantage of the opportunity. There's not a lot of personal involvement. It's especially when you have a large volume of claims. And they'll keep your money for as long as they can before they got to pay it out. Obviously, when they're taking your premiums, they're investing it in buildings and whatever else they're doing. And they just keep on multiplying those dollars. But if they got to pay a claim, and it's a substantial claim, that affects their reserves, which they have to keep. And it affects their ultimate earnings at the end of the day because they got to pay money out. Nothing coming in, but something going out. So with that in mind, and one of the areas of law that I was very much involved in was what's called insurance bad faith. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to address some of the questions that were raised by some of the listeners. They were very good questions. Actually got a bunch of people sent me texts and emails and whatever. So first, let me talk about additional living expenses. Additional living expenses are provided for in your policy. Obviously, this doesn't apply to commercial losses, but for residential losses, you get to move to a place of like, kind, and quality. In other words, if you were renting your own home out before the fire and you knew you would get X dollars a month, you've got that pretty much as a comparable for you to go out and find another place. If you got a 3-bedroom house, you're entitled to get a 3-bedroom house someplace else. And it's all pretty flexible. But you have to actually move because it's what they call an incurred expense. You don't get it unless you actually incur it. And what's interesting is if you eat at home every night and you're a 7-day-a-week at home and you do gourmet meals and things at home, you can go out to gourmet restaurants because it's the same and have all your meals paid for by the insurance company. And in fact, if it takes a while for you to go back and forth to where you're currently residing from where you would have been, you can calculate the miles. And you're getting 58.5 cents a mile, I think is what it is in California right now, for the mileage you incur. So additional living expenses is like an extra expense. It's something you wouldn't have spent for but for the event. Now, one of the things I might have mentioned it last week, I had a client at one time who put in a claim to the insurance company for an apartment that they claimed they were living in San Diego. Turns out they weren't living in an apartment in San Diego. They were living with their mother someplace in the valley. And so when the insurance company found out they weren't exactly living in that place, they denied the claim, number one, and denied the rest of the claim. So you'd say to yourself, well, wow, how could they do that? Well, that's called fraud. And one of the remedies that the law provides, either a legal remedy or an equitable remedy, is something called rescission. The insurance company says you committed fraud, we're avoiding the policy, you get nothing, but they will send you a check for your last premium. And that's been the experience. So you're taking a big gamble trying to make money off of an unhappy and unfortunate event. Strong recommendation, tell it like it is. Don't fudge anything, don't make it more than it is, because you may end up with nothing at the end of the day. And I could give you stories, legends of stories, where that exactly happened. People claiming they own property that they didn't own, people claiming values that really were not legitimate, but they were doing it to make money off the insurance company. They're not stupid. They have their own department called the SIU department. SIU stands for Special Investigations Unit. These are oftentimes retired policemen, people involved in law enforcement, and they're going to look your claim over. And if you're fudging it up, they're going to deny it. So word to the wary, tell it like it is. So we get into valuations. That's a very interesting subject matter. People kept asking me, what about all the stuff that I had in my closet? I had all these shoes, and I had a wonderful wardrobe of first-class suits and sport jackets and custom-made shirts and all these other things. It was all in my closet. Well, one of the things that the public adjuster is going to do is they're going to get you an inventory of what was in there, and you get what's called fair market value or actual cash value for whatever is in that closet. Many times it didn't necessarily have to burn to the ground. Smoke. Sometimes when it gets to be so smoky, it affects the fabric. They'll offer to have it de-smoked. And there are companies that come in and will do that. There's one engineering company that I know of that basically come in with the machines and they just clean all your stuff. Or they'll just take it out to the cleaners and they'll clean it for you and send it back. Some people say it's okay. Other people say they could still smell a little bit of it. And you're entitled to be made whole, meaning you get whatever it was worth before the fire. And so you may end up with a new wardrobe or not. You don't have to replace it. You get actual cash value until you replace it, assuming you have a replacement cost policy. So you go out and you get an estimate of what it would cost to replace that suit. And even though the old definition of actual cash value was replacement cost less depreciation, that's not necessarily the case. You need to look at what the fair market value of an Armani suit is that may have been a year old, so the depreciation is kind of built in already. But when you replace, you get new for old. So if you go out to the store and you buy yourself a nice new Armani suit, they're going to pay for it. And it's the same thing basically with a new home. This presents a lot of interesting issues because most policies, and I'm pretty much focusing today on residential losses, although I am going to talk about commercial losses because they could be significant and they involve a group of different elements. But for purposes of a residential property, you have the right to go out and buy another house which was of like kind and quality to the one that you lost. And you can do that within a certain number of days after the event has taken place. And very important, you've notified the insurance company of your intention to replace. Generally, the policy provides for 180 days. We'll talk a little bit more about that right after the break.
AM KCAA.
Herb Dodell is a lawyer and a judge for the people. Having served as a Superior Court judge, presiding over more than 9,000 cases, He has witnessed firsthand how complicated and corrupt the legal system can be. His goal is to show how things really work in the legal system so that people can navigate the legal system in the best way for them. Many people often feel marginalized by the legal system and are uninformed about how to proceed when unfortunate circumstances arise in their life. Judge Herb will pull back the curtain, lift the veil so people can truly understand their rights, have access to top legal personnel that they can trust, and have knowledge about how things work so they can make better choices. Judge Herb isn't just knowledgeable. His integrity and spiritual values are truly what make him different. He cares about democratizing access and information for all and desires to turn on the light so the people, you, can benefit. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, so this is how it works with residential properties. Your old home, the one that burned down, let's say hypothetically it had a $300,000 mortgage, and now you're going to buy a new home. How it works is the insurance company, pursuant to an endorsement to the policy, there's a number for it, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, that requires the insurance company to pay off the mortgage. They're listed as an underinsured or an other interest. Usually you could see that, and the lenders will insist that you get a policy that includes them. And so they end up paying off your mortgage. Let's say it's $1 million policy, and that's the value of your home. You now have $700,000. You could go to Vegas. You could do whatever you want. You don't have to replace. You don't have to repair. You don't have to do anything. You can take the actual cash value and do whatever you want. Or if you buy a new place, you've got $700 to start with. You're obviously going to need to get a new mortgage. Your old mortgage is paid off, but you got to get a new mortgage. And the interesting question, and there really is no authority on it as far as I could find. Let's say your old mortgage was, you got it at a time when the mortgage rates were like 2.5%. Now the market is at 5%. So instead of paying 2.5%, your mortgage is now paid off, you'll get a new mortgage that's costing you double what it was costing you before. I think that that's probably covered. That's just my opinion, that now there's no case authority or statutory authority on the subject.
That's interesting.
But it's something that I never thought about before.
Yeah.
Somebody called me and asked me that question. I said, you know what? I don't know the answer, but I think given the circumstances, all consequential losses are covered.
I got a question
Up to the
for you,
policy
Judge.
limits.
I have a question for you.
You do? What's
I
that?
do.
What's that question? I'm with bated breath.
If you're a homeowner and you have a homeowner insurance or you pay a homeowner's fees, is that covered by a fire, like fire insurance?
Well, homeowner
like I have a condo in Palm Springs. I own a condo. I actually own a condo, Judge.
Hey, great.
I'm not desolate. Okay. Anyways, I'm curious. I've always been curious about this since these fires broke out. Does my homeowner policy with the homeowners association cover fire?
Okay, first of all, there's a difference between having your own insurance policy because you own your own home, and it's not part of a homeowners association.
It's a homeowners association.
But on the other hand, you will have in your CC&Rs for the homeowners association insurance provisions. They will generally cover the common areas. And depending on the type of insurance that you have, it may have additional coverages. But generally speaking, you need to insure your own contents.
For fire.
What's for fire?
Okay.
Whatever is it.
In the interior, but the exterior would be covered by the homeowners association?
Depending on the language of your CC&Rs, generally it covers what they call the common areas, the pool areas, the landscaping. And if you have a home, by the way, if your trees burn, because we went to see some neighbors yesterday whose backyard was pretty seriously burned, and they had these wonderful tall pine trees. They're gone. They're burned. Can he replace the palm trees and have the insurance company pay for it? The answer is yes.
Cool. So if my Christmas tree,
up to a limit.
so if my Christmas tree I planted 5 years ago in front of my condo, if it goes up, I can get the $10 I bought it at Target for.
Well, you're talking about a Christmas tree and all that. No, but generally speaking, there's a limit, $2,500, $5,000, what they call trees and shrubs.
Okay.
Trees and shrubs. But generally speaking, homeowners insurance, now that it's legal, it may very well be coverable. You want to go, chase them for the 6 cannabis plants? I guess you could. I can't see a reason why not. Kind of an interesting question, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Well, it's high time for that, that they think about taking care of all these little things. But generally speaking, fire means all kinds of fire other than the ones you start yourself. And by the way, arson is considered a fraud, believe it or not, because you really caused the damage and you're claiming that the damage was not caused by you. So that's a fraudulent misrepresentation. And when we talk about how these litigations work, you'll see how significant that can be, especially if you're claiming property that you either didn't own or was a replica and now you're claiming it as an original. That's where you go with misrepresentations. A serious problem. You run a big risk of getting nothing. Some guy called me and said to me, you know what, I'm going to get another house for a day, and I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to do all these things. He's already figuring out all the machinations of how he's going to make money on his claim. And I said to him, you are taking a big risk. Is it really worth, not only from a legal standpoint, but from a moral standpoint, is it really worth doing what you're doing or want to do because you want to make money on this unfortunate event? I hope I kind of changed his thinking, because he may find himself with nothing and a criminal case to boot. I mean, I may have
deserves it.
I may have told this story before. We had a case that we actually tried it twice. First time a hung jury, criminal case, where the guy claimed that the value of these brake pads that he had bought in boxes and boxes and boxes of it, obsolete brake pads and whatever, and he claimed it was worth $725,000.
Brake pads?
Old brake pads. Oh, he had a warehouse full of them.
Oh, it's a warehouse full.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
okay.
And it was an arson fire, maybe.
Okay.
But he presented a receipt from some guy who immediately disappeared and moved back to India when we tried to find out if he really sold them these brake pads. And they were sold for really $37,000, and he claimed it was worth $725,000.
Why do people do this stuff? I mean, why are people so
money.
Morally corrupt?
Making money.
Yeah, that's not the way to make money.
Well, to my way of thinking,
I'd rather be broke.
It's a terrible investment.
I'd rather be broke.
It's a terrible investment because there's a spiritual concept called the bread of shame, meaning if you get something that you didn't earn, you end up giving it back at some point down the road because you got it by ill-gotten gains. And you may think you got the home run with the bases loaded when you got your check from the insurance company, but down the road you're going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're walking down the street and all of a sudden, a shingle from the roof falls up and hits you on the head. Those are the things that happen, and you don't connect it. You see, the problem is we don't take the two events, the unreasonable efforts to collect it versus the outcome, which is the effect. We don't necessarily correlate the two. And so the bottom line is that you can maybe make a few bucks in the beginning, but you'll give it back in form of poor health, poor financial, poor relationships. There is a price to pay. I mention it almost every week, I think, and I think I'm going to continue to do that. It's called the law of cause and effect. The cause is what you create. That's what the choices that you have every day. You can pick what you want to do, but there is a price to pay for it. And if you do it right, and if you perform like the Creator, which provides everything for us, you get all of that light and all of that positive energy. And if you do it the other way around, instant gratification and a bang at the end of the day. So in terms of making fraudulent claims, it makes no sense from a material and a spiritual sense to do it. It's no different than lying to people and expecting to get away with it because nobody's going to catch you. It doesn't matter. Somebody is going to catch you, but it's you who's going to catch you. And at the end of the day, you will end up paying it back. So we were talking about houses. You can take the money, as I mentioned, and go to Vegas. You can do whatever you want, and the insurance company is going to pay you for it. Fair market value. We started to talk about the clothing and things. Now, there's a very important concept in the law, and I probably mentioned it now that I've been sitting in small claims for the last, 2-3 years. I guess that's pretty much all I'm doing now. I always give a little speech, and I say, most cases are decided on a concept called, what do you think the concept is called?
I don't know.
Burden of proof.
Okay.
Burden of proof. Civil case, I'll repeat it. Civil case, it's called the preponderance of evidence, meaning more likely than not.
Right.
Percentage-wise, maybe 51%. There's another burden of proof called clear and convincing evidence. That applies to certain instances like punitive damages, generally willful kinds of things, and in restraining orders, not domestic violence restraining orders, in general restraining orders, stalking, harassment, threats, and things of that nature, the burden of proof is called clear and convincing evidence, meaning if at the end of the day the judge doesn't know by clear and convincing evidence, then the party with the burden of proof loses. Criminal cases, everybody knows that one, beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. And that's a pretty tough burden to hit. That's why criminal cases oftentimes end up in verdicts of not guilty, not innocence, but not guilty, because they haven't met the burden of proof. So
beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. Everything has doubt. The jury instruction on reasonable doubt, I remember the name of it, I think it's 3.60. It's been a long time since I've looked at the numbers. But there's a jury instruction on the definition of reasonable doubt. And that's why you make sure as a trial lawyer that you get those kinds of instructions to the jury. That one's pretty much standard, just like believability of witness is pretty much standard. Negligence case is pretty much standard. But some of them, you can handcraft them. And if the other side doesn't agree, it gets to the jury, and they can apply the law, to the facts. So in terms of your claims to the insurance company, first question you want to ask is, who's got the burden of proof? Who's got the burden of proof? What do you think?
Probably the person making the claim, I would think.
That's partially right.
Well, I'm partially smart.
Who's here today? Are you partially smart today?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well,
I'll think about it.
Okay, well, you let me know at the end of the next commercial.
Okay, I'll let you know at the end of the show.
Okay. I usually say to him, "How's the show today?" And usually you're very complimentary, so
it's going good now. Listen, you're an expert on this stuff. You're an expert. You've been doing this for 40 years. I mean, I don't know how to comment on any of this stuff. I mean, you've got the you're the wise man on this stuff. Well, anybody who has a problem with their insurance company during this fire, the judge is the person could contact at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. Askjudgeherb@gmail.com. You got any questions concerning if you had any loss during this fire season or whatever, any insurance claims, the judge is the one to know.
Well, I'm
not. Is that enough ass kissing for you?
Well, I'm not actually looking for work, but the fact of the matter is I'm trying to help the public because most of them are.
That's why you do the show.
It's true. That's why I do the show.
I know. You tell me that all the time.
Well, it's true.
I know it is. We got to take a break.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I'm half stupid or half smart after the break.
Well, now we've done half the show. What do you?
I know.
How are you
that's
going
what I'm
so
saying.
far?
I'll let you know later. All right. We'll be back with the judge after this. By the way, get his book, From the Trench to the Bunch.
To the bunch? To the bunch?
I said to the bench, didn't I?
No, you said to the bunch.
I don't know what the hell I'm saying. To the brunch. From the trench to the brunch. All right, we'll be back with the judge. It's on Amazon. From the trench to the bench. We'll be back after this.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
In his book, From the Trench to the Bench, Judge Herb Dodell demystifies the legal system, including both civil and criminal, the lawyers, the judges, and the process. As a judge, former deputy district attorney, and criminal defense attorney, he knows the legal system. He has the inside information that you need to pick a lawyer, and he's here to give it to you. No matter what you're facing that makes you think you may need a lawyer, Judge Herb will shed valuable light on your situation and reveal your best options and many secrets of how the judicial system actually works. To find out more about how the legal system really works, you can get your copy of Judge Herb Dodell's eye-opening book, From the Trench to the Bench, at Amazon.com.
So what about the deductibles? People want to know, I got a deductible. I got a $5,000 deductible. How does that really work? You know, on contents claims, you will have to pay the deductible. However, if the loss is what's considered a total loss, you don't have to pay the deductible.
Oh, that's good news.
People don't know that. They could get stuck for that deductible and not realize that the insurance company is not going to apply the deductible because it's a total.
Are they going to tell you that?
Depends on what insurance company you have.
So some insurance companies won't tell you.
There are some very good insurance companies. In fact, we were talking to the neighbors yesterday, and one of them had the same insurance company that we have, which is Chubb. They are the best. They are terrific. They call you the next day. They don't hassle you. They don't drag it out. Very, very good. On the other hand, you get what we call the direct writers. A lot of them are playing the game. They'll change adjusters on you like you change your shorts. And,
I only do that once a week.
well, they'll change adjusters every week, too. But there's a new rule. There's a rule. If they change the adjusters 5 times on your claim,
Yeah.
you're entitled to a certain kind of report that they normally don't have to give you. So, because that's a common occurrence. You know, you call the adjuster, you spoke to him or her a couple of days ago, oh, they've been reassigned. Now you got somebody brand new. Oh, I need to review your file.
Don't you think that plays into the person filing the claims right into their game? Because, I mean, if you're getting the runaround, I mean, you would think if you had to sue the insurance company that you could show the judge.
Yes. You said the jury.
Or the jury or whoever. I mean, it could be a judge or a jury. It could be either one, right? Doesn't have to necessarily be a jury.
You can ask for a jury.
I'm just saying, but you could have a judge or a jury. That's what I'm saying. It could be either one. You could say, listen, you know, this guy, they gave me the runaround. They gave me 10 different adjusters in a year, and I couldn't get a straight answer, and then blah, 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 blah. And
Absolutely. The first thing you do when you are suing an insurance company for bad faith, other than file the complaint, first thing you do is you ask for the claim file. And be careful when you ask for the claim file, make sure you ask for the front and back covers.
Yeah.
You know, because they write on those things. And they may be cardboard or whatever they make these manila things out of. You want that. You want every conversation that you ever had.
That's what I'm saying. Another thing, and I was going to point this out too, is that you probably should document everything. I mean, my dad told me if I ever get sued or whatever, and I've been sued in small claims court, is to document everything, write down everything, sort of have a record, a date, and a time of everything, every conversation, everything you did with the person that you're dealing with, or a company.
Absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Before I asked
God
you the
rest his
question,
soul.
I asked you the question about, you know, the burden of proof kind of thing, and who has the burden of proof. Well, generally, the way it works is that you present your claim, and at some point in time, you're going to sign a document called a proof of loss. It's a document signed under penalty of perjury that you must submit to your insurance company before they'll pay you. They require that. But if you put down all of your items and put down a value that you believe is a reasonable value, the burden of proof now really shifts to the insurance company to show that it's not what it's worth, and it's worth a lot less. And once you have a burden of proof shift like that, the insurance company has to satisfy the trier of fact, judge or jury, that their valuation is more realistic more likely than not. Remember, those are the languages from preponderance of the evidence. More likely than not. Many of these cases end up or should end up in what's called an appraisal. I may have mentioned it last week. I wrote an article on appraisals for California Lawyer Magazine, and it's attached in the appendix to the book, because it basically describes the whole process of how it starts and how it ends. They only deal with proof of loss and damage. This procedure does not apply to causation or other issues dealing with coverage. But you can have this decided. If you're claiming your Armani suit was worth $1,000 and they say it's worth $59, and you go to an appraisal, if the appraisal panel, which consists of 3 people, if the appraisal panel says it's worth $1,000, you get $1,000. And now you want to talk about going to a jury? I always used to say to them, when there were appraisal awards which were higher than the offers, I used the appraisal award as evidence of their unreasonableness. They'd say, okay, you offered $12 for this, and the appraisal panel said it was $40. It's a big difference. Puts them right on the defensive. Bad faith cases are where the money is made, truly, in insurance cases.
Can you get more money?
You can make a lot of money in a bad faith case.
Yeah, so you can get more money.
More. It's like unlimited.
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 There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, right?
Oh, there's going to be
it's crazy.
Look, for the 1993 earthquakes, I had earthquake cases for at least 15 years.
Wow.
They just kept on coming.
I bet.
And earthquake coverage obviously is separate, and you need to have that. If there's an earthquake, it's not covered by your regular policy. It's a specific exclusion.
Is fire normally covered with your normal policy?
Yes, fire is covered.
Okay. All right.
And windstorm is covered.
But not mudslides.
Well, now mudslides are going to be covered. I think under some of the new regulations, as I read them, if the mudslide came about as a result of the fire and the rain that took place after the fire, which caused the hillside to get more muddy and slide down, that's probably covered. If you just have a plain old landslide, one day when you get up in it's just mud from the rain.
No, I did. The rain. Yeah.
That's
talking about from the fire. Talking about from the fire.
I think that these days that's going to be covered. You're going to see a lot of bad faith cases right now because the insurance companies, if they act as they have been acting for a long, long time, they will be exposed. You see, one of the benefits of a bad faith case, there's 2 real substantial benefits, by the way. The first benefit is you get what's called consequential damages. That doesn't apply to corporations, it applies to individuals. But the consequential damages is your emotional pain and suffering, the hassle, you had to hire a lawyer, you had to do this, you couldn't live there, and you make that argument. It's called a consequential damage or a special damage. The insurance company is responsible if you prove bad faith. You have to prove it. Now, there's a concept in California called the genuine dispute doctrine. It comes from a case called Chateau Chambray, and it says basically if the insurance company acted reasonably in their evaluation and it was a genuine dispute, then you can't recover for that. So the fight becomes whether it was a genuine dispute or not. If they hire the same person as an expert appraiser or something like that because they get nice low numbers, and you can show that, then genuine dispute doctrine doesn't apply. So you're allowed to do that. There's 2 cases, Fraley and Gabara, both of those cases hold that. If you can show that they acted in bad faith, not only do you get all your consequential damages, you may even get punitive damages. And punitive damages are based on the value of the entity, value of the defendant. There's a limit based on a case that was decided in the United States Supreme Court that says you can't just get unlimited punitive damages. They kind of restrict it to no more than 9 times your compensatory damages. So most of the punitive damage cases where you get punitive damages and they stick and are not taken away by the Court of Appeals, which happens, it averages 4 or 5 times your compensatory. So if you got $200,000 in compensatories, you could potentially see $1 million in punitive damages.
Let me ask you a question, Judge. How long do you think, like, let's say somebody's house burned down, Okay, they lost everything. How long should it take the insurance company to do the appraisal, to do all the legwork, and to get you your money? What would be a reasonable time?
Well, it's going to depend on whether you're doing it yourself or you have a public adjuster that's in it.
Well, let's just
The
say
PA
let's say
cases are
let's,
gonna go
let's
faster.
well, let's say you're doing it yourself. Let's say you're not hiring anybody.
And that's just about the house?
Just about the house
No
and all
contents?
and well, the contents too, everything. I mean,
Well, it
you
takes
lost
time.
everything. Like you lost everything. You lost your car, you lost your motorcycles, your surfboard, your clothes. You lost everything. You got nothing. How long would something like that? What would be a reasonable amount of time for somebody to expect to get a claim? Settled?
Well, there are a lot of different ways to do it too, because you can start off by asking for an advance. And a lot of the carriers will give you an advance.
That's very cool.
They know pretty much what the range is going to be, so you get an advance. You have to ask for it. The cases will go faster usually with the public adjuster because they get the inventories done quicker. The contents is usually the hardest part of the claim because the value of the house is pretty simple. They send out an appraiser.
Right.
You send your appraiser out. You come up with a number.
Would they
and that's it.
would the insurance company honor that appraisal and give you the money there, and then go through the contents afterwards? Or
They could. They could.
I'm just curious because I know a lot of people are going through hell right now and have lost everything or lost most of everything. And I'm sure the one question they're asking is, how long is this going to take? That would be the one question. If I lost everything, all my belongings, everything, I'd go, wow, how long am I going to have to wait to get my money from the insurance company?
Put aside the advances that you can request. You can request advances even on building of your house. You're going to hire a contractor. They want money up front. They'll generally do that. If they think that the contractor's estimate is a reasonable one, they'll give them an advance. And what happens with rebuilds generally is you set up a construction account so that as you go along with the reconstruction process, they will allow you to take that money out and pay the contractor. They won't give you all the money up front, although if you replace your house, it's considered to be a replacement cost. You don't necessarily only get the actual cash value, you get the replacement cost. And that can be a very big difference, especially if you have an old house.
Yeah.
And the fair market value may be very different than the cost of replacement. So generally speaking, I would say, putting aside all the advances, there's no legitimate reason, unless it's an exemplary circumstance, for this thing to go more than 6 months.
No, that's reasonable.
But the insurance code and the regulations, which run the insurance companies, pretty much gives them a schedule of things to do. They've got to give you a notice every 30 days.
Oh, so there's regulations here.
Yes, and you need somebody who knows what those regulations are. And the bottom line really is every 30 days they got to give you a status report. And you get a chance to call them back and say, what do you mean it's going to take such and such and such and such? You get an opportunity to respond. And again, just like your father said, make a note. The best bad faith cases are either the low balls, which means, and I'm not doing an ad for Tommy John, because I heard him do that ad as I was coming in today.
Tommy John, the pitcher. We're talking about the Dodger pitcher.
No, I'm talking about the underwear.
Oh, the underwear. I thought you were talking about the pitcher, Tommy John. He used to throw a low ball. He used to throw a sinker ball.
I'm talking about the guy that sells.
I don't know. Tommy John underwear. I don't know what the hell that is.
Well, he advertises a lot.
Oh, really? I don't know.
He's got these little things. So the bottom line is, it's the low ball offers.
Low ball.
The low ball offers. Number one.
Luckily, I don't have.
And secondly, it's the delay. It's the delay.
I mean, low ones.
I don't think your voice is getting higher, Gary. The second is long delays, changes of adjusters. That's the stuff that you're looking to build on to make your bad faith case.
All right, listen.
We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment.
Great. Okay, it's For the People, Judge Herb Dodell. The book, From the Trench to the Bench, not the brunch, available on Amazon.com. Or you can go have brunch and read the book during the brunch,
Great Christmas gift.
It sure is. I want one for my stocking.
Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
Did you ever meet a lawyer that was for the people? someone who had the best interests of the people at heart. Herb Dodell has been a lawyer for more than 50 years and has been a Superior Court judge for 9 years, having presided over more than 9,000 cases. In this show, he will reveal the secrets of how things really work in the legal system, so you can maximize your position and benefit most when you're in trouble and need someone on your side to simplify the process for you. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, I want to talk about two other subjects in this last segment of the show today, because you may find yourself confronted by these situations. One is called coinsurance. This does not apply to homeowners or renters. It's generally involved in commercial losses. Coinsurance means that you must insure a certain percentage of the value. In other words, if the value of a property is worth $100,000 and you have what they call an 80% coinsurance clause, and it's in the policy and it's negotiable because the percentages are negotiable, you have to insure 80% of that $100,000. And if you don't, and the value turns out to be greater than what you insured, you pay a penalty. And the penalty applies against partial losses, not complete losses, but partial losses. So if you had a $50,000 loss on a $100,000 building and you didn't insure the value, you take the percentage you should have had versus the percentage that you had, and you apply that to the $50,000 loss. You may only get $40,000 or $35,000. This is mostly commercial. It involves a lot with fluctuating inventories, making sure that you insure the value. There are exceptions with the inventories for seasonal businesses, and there's what they call an agreed sum endorsement. That means you eliminate the coinsurance penalty. The parties agree to the value. But these are technical things that the public adjusters all know, and those of us who did this kind of work for as long as we did know that as well. So watch out for coinsurance in commercial losses. Commercial losses are oftentimes very different. You know, businesses were damaged in these fires too. And a lot of business losses are what they call business interruption or loss of profits. And if you're out of business for a month because the place is burned or smoky or whatever it is, you're entitled to what you would have made, depending on the definition of the formula in your particular policy. And they are sometimes very different from each other. You really need to know somebody who is capable of determining what kind of coverage works for you, which is going to be the next subject I'm going to talk about. And so you want to make sure that you're adequately insured. What happens if you haven't changed your insurance policy limits on your home for years? Meaning that your premium isn't going up, right? Because you're paying premium based on your coverage limits, subject to deductions and things of that nature. And you say, you look at your policy after your fire, and you say, what do you mean I'm only going to get so much? It's worth far more than that. Well, you're underinsured. What do you do about it? Can you sue your insurance agent or broker? What do you think?
Probably not.
Good guess, Gary.
That wasn't a guess.
You could sue them, but the chances of beating them on that issue alone.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything from the insurance company if they don't have it insured.
No, the broker or the agent. The agent, just so people understand the difference between an agent and a broker. An agent generally works for the company.
For the insurance company.
Yeah, like State Farm. They only deal with their own
agents.
They call them captive agents. That's what they're called, captive agents.
Okay.
And they only deal with their own agents, but those agents have what they call binding authority. Binding authority means you can make the arrangement with the agent.
They represent the company.
They represent the company, and they have the authority to
Now, that was a guess.
That was pretty good. The brokers are different. Brokers are out there shopping the markets.
Right.
You hear all these ads for, we can get you a better quote on this and a better quote on that.
Yeah.
They don't have binding authority.
So you can sue them.
And Not really.
Okay, so you can't even sue the brokers.
Because the cases, and I once wrote an article on it, matter of fact, called Liability of Insurance Agents and Brokers, and the reality is that they're not supposed to follow you values. You should.
Right.
You want more. If you think the property's gone up in value, you need to buy more insurance.
It's your policy. It's not the broker's policy. They have tons of policies, different, clients. So of course they can't keep up with every client's policy. It has to be up to you to do it.
Well, that's basically the holding of the case.
There you go.
You could have been a lawyer.
I should have been.
Well, you started. Didn't you start? Didn't your father want you to be a lawyer?
Well, my dad was a criminal attorney, but I decided to be.
It would have been a crime for you to be a lawyer, I suppose.
Then I decided to be a rock DJ. What a mistake.
Well, but the bottom line is the analysis is really right. They not have to watch out for you, but there are some exceptions.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, and I had one of those cases, by the way. It fell into one of the exceptions. That is if you tell the broker what you want to have, or the agent, what you want to have and why you want to have it, and they don't get it for you, then there's exposure.
Right.
I think I told the case I had. I was in Philadelphia taking a deposition of the claims guy, and the original claim was that my client had ordered earthquake insurance. He bought earthquake insurance. There was an earthquake, makes a claim. They said, "Oh, you have no earthquake insurance." He said, "Well, what do you mean I don't have it?" He said, "You didn't buy it." He says, "Yes, I did." They said, "No, you didn't." So I'm in this hotel room. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going through the box for the exhibits for the deposition the following morning. And I'm digging through it, and all of a sudden I come across a document from the broker or the agent. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was an agent. From the agent to the underwriter. Now, an underwriter is the person who makes the decision as to whether or not to issue the policy. They evaluate the risk. They calculate the premiums. They do all of that. And I'm looking through this document, and sure enough, there's a piece of paper from the agent confirming that the client was ordering earthquake insurance.
Wow.
You know, I settled that case within a week.
I'm sure you did.
A very legitimate lawyer on the other side, by the way. Defense lawyers oftentimes come across as very nice, friendly people, but they work for the insurance companies, and they could smile all day, and it's not real. They may be nice people outside, but they got an agenda to work on.
Of course.
And so this was a very legitimate guy. This lawyer, he worked for a number of insurance companies. I always thought he was a very honorable guy. But we settled that case against the broker, against the agent, because he didn't get him the insurance. The company we got the company stuck too because they had knowledge, because the memo was to their underwriting department. The fact that they didn't write it, they could have said, well, we wouldn't have written it anyway, but they would have had to take some kind of action to show that they were acting on the recommendation or the application of the insured.
The point being, the guy thought he had earthquake insurance. They sent him a document. There was a document there, and lo and behold, you found it. And
he never knew about that document. That was in the claim file.
He never even knew about it.
No, the client never knew about it.
Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he get? I mean, that's sort of.
They didn't volunteer.
But I'm just saying that's sort of stupid on your client's part. That, I'm just very because of my dad's legal background, I'm very paper, oriented. Documents left and right. I'm always very thorough with documents and getting documents, because I think that's the only way you can win on these insurance claims or any type of claim.
Well, that's true.
In court.
There's a judge that I know downtown. I won't mention his name, but he says documents don't lie, people do.
Exactly.
And he wants documents for everything.
There you go.
The reality is, and it really is a reality, and that's how I became friends with one of the insurance defense lawyers. We're very close friends now. In fact, we had her as a guest on one of the early shows. She worked for a firm that had no scruples. And the senior partner there, who was fun socially, he was a terrific guy. We had a great social relationship. And he learned from the firm that he was with, which is still a very prominent defense firm, insurance defense firm, documents can disappear. And they do. and you know it exists, but you can't prove that it exists. And they say, no, we never saw that, or whatever it is. And they'll destroy documents. They will lie. They'll tell you that that person is not there anymore. I think in fact, I was reading about it in the book the other day. I was making some changes. I remember taking and making an inquiry of one of these insurance companies, a big one. And they said, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. I was trying to get the underwriter because that was an issue. In fact, that was the same case.
He's in Bali.
No, it was a different case. And the bottom line was, he doesn't work here anymore. I didn't trust them. I knew that firm, that they played the honest game. And so I had somebody call over to the insurance company and ask for him. Oh, he's out having lunch.
Wow.
He was there. You know, I ran into court. In fact, there was a case that was tried in federal court in Las Vegas. I remember that one. The jury deliberation was 17 minutes. It was the shortest deliberation I'd ever had before. And I got him. I got his deposition. He killed him. They had claimed they had canceled the policy 2 days before the fire. 4 people died in that fire. I remember that one real well.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a terrible landlord. He was one of those horrible people. And the people in this motel, it was called the Motel 5. It wasn't even good to be called Motel 6. It was Motel 5. And 4 people died because they were burning garbage to keep warm. He didn't have heat in the motel room.
You're kidding me.
True story. Anyway, I take this guy's deposition. We go to Vegas. We try the case. And the jury didn't take very long. 17 minutes. And the reality was they'll hide you. They'll hide the guy, the gal. The that guy's not here anymore. He's in Kansas City.
That's ridiculous.
He's in Kansas City.
I mean, they have private investigators.
They know. I say, oh, he's in Kansas City? So I set the deposition in Kansas City, right? Get ready to go? Oh, they just got transferred to Orlando. They jump you around to run up your costs. It's part of the litigation game, which I refused to play when I was a very aggressive litigator. I was one of those people who never gave up, and I was on top of them all the time. And so I'd say, I'll chase it until I got it. I told the story of going back to the Midwest. It took me 6 months to get a deposition of a claims supervisor, one of the top guys. And I took his deposition. And I brought him all the research I had done on how many claims that they deny and how many claims they pay and the basis. And I got him to admit that of the 100 claims that they denied wrongfully, they ended up only paying 10 to 15% because they beat the people. People died. They couldn't get a lawyer. They wore them down. They didn't want to be in it. It becomes part of their lives. So I took this guy's deposition, and another great lawyer. We flew back on the same plane after the deposition, and he was a good guy. And so I said to him, you're dead. You're dead. He got home. The next day I settled the case for a lot of money, far more than the case was really worth, because they were scared. They made it a condition that I not disclose the name of the insurance. That's why I will never tell you who the company is.
Yeah.
And they didn't want that information to ever get out.
Always keep your paperwork.
They knew that if this had been published, they would be facing lots and lots of lawsuits.
Yeah.
So that was it. This is an overview a little bit about fire and casualty. This applies to burglaries, smoke damage. It applies to all these other sidelights. If you really want to know what's covered and what's not, you need to read that policy. And most likely, you don't know what the stuff means to begin with. It's 60 pages of gobbledygook.
Update it, too.
Yeah, and update it, too. You never know. And memorialize it with the agent and the broker what you want.
Amen.
Then you got it. Then you got them.
Preach, Judge. Preach.
Okay, we'll preach next week.
Okay. If you want to get the judge's book, From the Trench to the Bench, on Amazon.com. And also, if you want to ask the judge a question on insurance or anything, AskJudgeHerb@gmail.com.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM.